Something happened to me recently that I thought I'd share with you guys. Well, it it didn't happen to me directly per se, but it happened to a client of mine. She used to live in Lagos, and she's now married and living in Abuja with her husband. And I happened to do the what's it called? The pre-wedding shoot. Yes, I handled the pre-wedding shoot, not just for her, but a couple of people in her crew as well. In fact, until I met them, I didn't realize, the different segments that exist in the wedding market, and one of them being, at least in this case, for those of us who are based in Abuja, that's brides and grooms who live here or who are going to live here but are going to have the wedding at home. And so, because of that, all they can do here really is the pre wedding shoot and then fly off back home and have everything done. So, over the last year, I've been handling a few of these interesting sort of gigs where all the couple want is just the pre-wedding shoot, because basically everything else is happening in Lagos or in Ilorin or those environs. And luckily for me, I seem to be tuning up my sales game, my referral game, and so I happen to be getting quite a bit of referrals from these sorts of things. And that's how I actually met this bride. Anyway, no, but for now I'll just call her mommy because they are expecting a child in December. So she reached out, and we've been chatting back and forth about the naming ceremony, the dedication, I think. Yeah, the baby dedication, coverage for that, some baby photos in the house, yada, 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 stuff like that, the typical sort of things. And we concluded and issued out the invoices, and basically we're just waiting for nature to do its thing, for the water to break, and for us to hear the happy cries of baby and to hear that mommy and baby are doing okay. And then the other things will follow. Family members meet and then they fix a date, and we know that we're good to go. We have a date that we're working with. So, some friends of hers reached out, one of whom I also happen to take care of in this kind of situation as well. Pre-wedding shoot over here, wedding based in Lagos. And they figured, since I was already handling the baby dedication photos, that they would like me to join them in throwing a surprise maternity session for mommy. Remember, let's just call her mommy. I want to protect her, protect her identity. So they wanted us to throw a surprise maternity session for mommy. At first, I was concerned because mommy made it quite clear that she's not down for these sorts of things. She doesn't want to go through the whole hassle. And like most, let me not say most, like some women feel during this period, they don't feel that they're looking like their best, and maybe they put on too much weight. Nose is too big, pimples, melasma, that's the dark skin around the eyes and things like that. So she wasn't really feeling up to it. But anyway, it seemed like a good idea. Her friends said that the main problem that mommy had was just that she didn't want to have to go through the whole hassle herself, and so they thought that if they were the ones going to organize the whole thing, that mommy wouldn't mind and she would come along gladly. Now, it turns out that their intuition on that was actually the case, and they really did enjoy themselves, and I was happy for the successful maternity shoot. Now, the interesting part of the whole thing is this. Now, the friends wanted me to do the shoot for X amount. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it for that amount because these are my rates, but because you guys are, because we're all family, we're all one, we're cool, we all flow in the same circles, I can do it for you guys at a discounted rate of X. And I did my thing, more questions on, and it turned out that they actually had a competing vendor that they were looking at. Some of the other girls wanted to go ahead with, and the fellow was going to do it for 15,000 naira. And at that point, I said what I typically say when okay, well, early on in the podcast, I'm sure you guys remember that I said some of the questions that you have to ask when you're going through the qualification process. We also have to run through the money conversations, the budget conversations. And sometimes it reaches a point where you find out that both of you guys are really at too much of a gap. So let's say for a cake artist, you have the money conversation, you find out that what they were thinking was 25K, but the cheapest of your cakes is going to be 125K. There's very little room for meeting in the middle. Because even if you wanted to say, you know what, I'll give you 50% off, that would still be 75, and the difference between 25 and 75 grand is still kind of huge. So we found ourselves in that kind of situation. And so I said what I typically say, like, wow, 15,000, okay. If it's 15 grand, you like the quality of his work, and these and these and these are the deliverables that he's offering, then by all means, go ahead with it. And so they decided to go ahead with it for the 15K. But since we had agreed that some of these photos would be part of the album for the baby dedication, I just told them, make sure that they're giving you guys the full resolution photos, and make sure that they don't watermark the photos, so that way we can seamlessly put them into the album, and mommy will have a nice experience from all of us. That's the committee of friends, and also me, the longtime faithful photographer of the crew. And they said the other photographer was cool with it, and we were good to go. So I've been following up with them because I wanted to know how the shoot went, and I also wanted to be sure that mommy is having fun and enthusiastically going through with everything. And it turns out that the shoot was fantastic. I mean, I loved the photos that came from the shoot, and they were really nice. And in fact, I think they gave mommy close to let's say 15, maybe 20 maybe 20 photos. And so she sent the photos to me. And then the first thing that I noticed, well, in fact, mommy pointed it out before I noticed it, was the watermarks. The watermarks were huge. Well, granted, the watermarks were not across their faces or the center of their bodies, so it's something we can work with. But I just told them, let's put through a polite request. Maybe they might listen. Maybe they might oblige. And so they did. And the photo studio said, no, we're not going to do that. If you want the watermarks off, take them off yourself. And I thought, okay, that's fair point, fair game. And moved on to the next item. And then I asked about the size of the photos. Wanted to be sure that they were decent, so that we could use them for the album, in case we would have to use one of them for a double overlay or something like that. And so she sent me the link, and I had a look at them. And surprisingly, the photos were roughly between 400 to maybe 500 kilobytes. Excuse me. Now, for those of you who aren't photographers, or who aren't interested in design and stuff like this, now 400 to 500 kilobytes could be a tad too small, depending on what it is that you are trying to design. And mommy had also mentioned, not just to me but to her friends, that she would like to have some of those other images framed. So I told mommy and the committee of friends, okay, why not just reach out to this other photographer and see if they can send the full res photos, even if the watermarks are still there. I'll take care of it. And so they did. And then the photographer came back, and his response was, nope, I'm not going to send you the full resolution photos. If you want the full resolution photos, you're going to have to pay 10 grand per photo. Now remember that I said that mommy received about 15 to 20 photos that she really liked. I mean, she loved all of them. And I guess the reasonable thing to say is that, what's that word? Caveat emptor. I guess caveat emptor will be the most reasonable thing to say at this point. Buyer beware. So the committee of friends should have been aware, and these are the kinds of questions that they should have asked. And so, yeah, of course, the fault was completely theirs, that they tried to hook up a present for their friend, mommy, and they may have botched up some of the key items, because mommy has the photos. Yes, she'll be able to have them in her album, but she might not be able to have any of them printed because they are too small. But since we're wedding industry professionals, I'm going to leave out the fault or culpability of mommy's friends and then address what it is, what our own fault is in this kind of situation. Now, amongst wedding photographers in particular, I don't think this would apply to wedding planners or maybe cake people, because I don't see how all these bait and switch tactics could work in those scenarios. But amongst wedding photographers, it's an old trick in the book where you try and lure people in on the low price, and then you try and gouge them on the upsell for other things. Now, whether this is a legitimate tactic or not, I will leave it for you guys to decide, because maybe some people will say it's a matter of taste. But looking at it from the angle of sales and personal selling and trying to secure referrals and repeat business, it is not a good tactic to lure people in on a low price and then bait and switch on to try and get a higher amount in on other items or on upsells. Now, the problem isn't with the strategy itself per se, but the problem is with not making these conditions known upfront before they enter into the. Sorry, one moment, guys. I will be back. Okay, guys, sorry about that. Had to attend to the kids, and I am back now. Okay, where was I? Yeah, so the problem with the strategy. Now, the flaw in the strategy is not an inherent flaw per se, but it becomes problematic if you don't let the customer, the client, whoever it is, the prospect, know ahead of time what all these extra terms and conditions are. So, if they told the committee of friends that, yes, we will do this for 15,000 naira, but if there's any image that you like, you will have to purchase the full resolution copy at 10,000 naira extra. They would have had all the information that they needed to make a decision. So, if these are the sorts of tactics that you are going to employ, dear fellow wedding industry professionals, photographers in particular, because I know that we do this a lot, let the client know ahead of time so that they can make an informed decision. Because if you don't do this, it leaves a sour taste in their mouth. Now think about it. Mommy had a fun session, a really, really fun session, and she got about 15 to 20 photos that she really loved, only to find out after the session was over that if she wanted full resolution copies, she would have to cough out an extra 150 to maybe 200k, which was way more than what I was charging in the first place. So this is what I recommend, dear industry professionals, especially wedding and event photographers. Be upfront about the terms and conditions from the get, or maybe possibly you should change your pricing strategy. For me, I have a figure that I'm comfortable with that I quote upfront, and people can either work with it or they can't. If they can't, I refer them to someone who will, if I can, or I just wish them the best of luck. So in this case, for the second photographer, if truly what he wanted to get out of the session was 150k or 200k, then price your maternity sessions accordingly and say that this is our package for 150k. You will be receiving 15 photos of full resolution copies, and we're going to do this number of change of clothes and this and this and that and that. So decide on what the desired amount is beforehand, and then build a strategy for having the pricing conversation and negotiations around that. So yeah, that is what I would recommend. But then again, if you're going to do this bait and switch thing, I would recommend making the ask after the shoot not such a tall order. So apart from letting them know about the terms and conditions, it would have been an entirely different experience if he came back and said, okay, I will give you the full resolution photos, but you're going to do so at 5K per copy. Now, 5K, in my own opinion, I think is still high, especially when you're dealing with someone who loves 15 photos. But you can see that 5K is not as much of a shock as 10K. And 2K is not much of a shock as 10K. But the bottom line is this. If he went about this strategy and said $2,000 per photo, wouldn't be unreasonable to think that mommy would have copped up an extra 10 grand to get 5 photos in full resolution, and then this photographer would have been able to make let's see, that's 15 plus 10, 25K out of the maternity shoot, which wouldn't be such a bad haul for the day, especially for someone who is using low should I say market penetration, entry level pricing, those sorts of ideas. I can't remember what the business term is, but for someone who's trying to use those sorts of tricks, bring them in low, then 25 grand would not be a bad haul. But bottom line is this: for photographers especially, let's be careful about pricing conversations. Let's make sure that everything is upfront. Let's stop all debating and switching. It gives us all a bad name. Make sure all the terms and conditions are upfront so that people know what it is that they're walking into, so that they have all the information that they need to make an informed choice. And the reason why we ought to do this is not just so that we can maximize our profits with the current client that we're facing, but also so that they will have an absolute gobsmack raving experience with us, and then tell their friends and their family and colleagues to come and do business with us in the future. So this photographer doesn't realize this, but from me now, speaking at the back end, because I'm in touch with committee of friends, I'm in touch with mommy, this fellow has pretty much burned his goodwill with this crew. So no one can take it away from him that he's a competent photographer and he's fantastic, but he really has burnt his goodwill with this crew. So I'll be surprised if other people within the whole setup, the other girls in the gang, will be calling him the next time any of them gets pregnant. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Sorry I went a little long-winded on the story. I hope that the lessons I was trying to draw out of these were quite clear. So thank you very much, guys, for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based photographer Tavishima Ayede. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Once again, if you want to hit me up on email, it's ayede.taver@gmail.com.